The absolutely fabulous, wonderful Irene Blea is an award-winning author, scholar, feminist activist, and a poet, and has an extensive publication record. She retired from California State University, Los Angeles after writing textbooks and academic articles to write poetry and novels. Her autobiography and a book of poetry were followed by Talking with Rudy, Conversations with Rodolfo Anaya, the award-winning literary giant. You can find her on Facebook. Irene?
Thank you, thank you. Good morning. Good morning to the people in the room and those that are on Zoom. Am I okay here?
Yes.
You could tell I'm not very tall because compared to our previous speaker, I would have to stand on my toes. Okay. It's nice to be here at Southwest Writers. I love Southwest Writers. Somebody asked me a little bit ago, how long have you been a member or active in Southwest Writers? I don't remember the year, but the president's first name was Sherry. Anybody remember that? Not our dear Sherry, but Robinson.
Yeah.
Thank you. What year was that, Rose?
I think that was the year before I became a member, and that was back in, oh Lord.
Early 80s. It was the early 80s.
Well, I became a member in 1990.
Okay. Anyway, it's been a long time, and it's always my favorite place to be because I love writers. I'm also a reader, and so I read your work, and I appreciate you. Congratulations to those who won awards. I'm very happy for you because if you win an award, it shines on all of us as writers, and that's a necessary thing, particularly nowadays. I was told that I need to stay here in order to stay by the microphone and so the Zoom people can see me. So I'm usually moving around. So today I'm moving less. I'm going to talk to you about my work as a civil rights activist and how that experience has sometimes crawled and sometimes just arrived with a bang into my writing life. But when we think about civil rights, most of us think about African American or the Black civil rights movement. And, we've had writers for a very long time with activist mentalities and sometimes agendas. They were very conscious of what they were doing. I'm not one of them. I just kind of backed into it because I happen to be a baby boomer. And those are two things that you need to know about me. One is, there are two things at least. One is that I'm a baby boomer. I was born May 12, 1946, the minute my father got home. And I'm going to be 80 years old, and I'm very proud of that. Thank you, Sherry. Wow, indeed. But I also was reared in a union family. My father was a steel worker and a union organizer. So I kind of got my politics at the kitchen table every evening. Our life revolved around my father's shift. So when he worked days, we ate at 3:30, 4 o'clock. When he worked graveyard, we ate alone, and Dad ate when he came home, but we had to be asleep. I'm sorry, when he worked days, we ate early. Graveyard, we shared breakfast, but we had to be quiet all day. And then there was the 3 to 11 shift. That was a little easier because Dad was gone and Mom was done for the day, and we could holler and scream and play kick the can out in the street. Those were the days when you could play in the street. Anyway, when we look at how people became involved in civil rights, it comes from various directions, but one place to start is within the African American civil rights movement, the Black civil rights movement, and the work, of course, of my favorites. So here are some of my favorites: Langston Hughes, Gwendolyn Brooks, Margaret Walker, Maya Angelou, and Nikki Giovanni. Who can forget Nikki Giovanni? Yeah. Sherry and I know those writers. They're excellent writers. If you haven't read their work, by all means, look at this American product. It is a powerful, informative, empowering literature. On the heels of this literature came the Chicano movement. And that's where I come in. I was standing in line. I was a welfare food stamp mother. I was a mother by the time I was 21. My husband was in Vietnam, and I hadn't gotten any allotment, so I needed to get food stamps. And I was standing in line, and there was an African American man in front of me and another cowboy kind of man in front of him. And he said to the African American man, "Gee, if I were a spick, I could get food stamps and I could get food for free." I'm standing there and get angrier. The quieter I stay, the more angry I get. So finally, the African American man turns around and looks at me, and I said, "Well, you heard what he said about Spicks. Imagine what he says about people of color." And the butchers and everybody went silent. And I got so scared. I was so scared I wanted to walk out. So I sat there trembling and got my hamburger and left. But that made a mark on me. So finally, things worked out for my husband. I went to Cherry Point, North Carolina. Those of you who went to Vietnam know that that was a major place for where our young men went to the Vietnam War, which was not a war, technically. Okay, don't get me started. So we go to the beach, and on this big sign in the beach is a sign that says, and I'm just going to say it, "No niggers and no dogs allowed on the beach." I thought that was the filthiest thing I had ever seen, and that perhaps it was smut off a bathroom wall. So we were with another couple, happened to be African American from Tarrytown, New York. And she and I walked to the edge of the pier, and the men were at where the pier began. I'm sure there's a nice name for it. They get into a fight. We go running back, and they're fighting over the fact that there are African Americans on the pier. So we go home, and I say to my husband, "What was that all about?" He said, "Remember that man that spit on you when we were in New Bern?" I said, "Yes." I said, "You hit him too. What's the matter with you?" He says, "I'll tell you what's the matter with me, Dippy." Okay, for those of you who've been in the Army. He said, "You need to learn about the civil rights movement and the fact that some people are putting up with this SHIT." I said, "I do. What is it?" He said, "Watch the news." He did not enable me. He just let me find out for myself. Boy, did I get a grip and get that grip quick. And by the time I returned to Colorado, where I was living, it was all over. The movement was full blown. The anti-Vietnam War protests were going on. And I decided I wanted to go to school and went on campus. And the first thing I run into is a Coors boycott. The Chicanos are having a Coors boycott or participating in the Coors boycott. And it was an informational session. This very handsome young man walks up to me. He kind of looked like John Denver, but it wasn't. I met John Denver at the University of Colorado Boulder. That's another story. But he said, "Would you like to join us in making some signs? We need people to help us make signs." So I helped make signs, and it happened to be Vietnam Vets Against the War. And I said, "Tell me about this," because I had a husband about ready to go. And before you knew it, I gained a political consciousness on a university campus. So if you've never been to a university campus, if you're a young person and need to make some decisions, by all means go to the university, because you not only learn in the classroom, you learn outside of the classroom. There's a lot to be learned. So here I was. By that time, I was 21, I guess 22, and was at the University of Southern Colorado in Pueblo, Colorado. And some of what happened there stayed with me as I continued my education. And every time I needed to write something, I wanted to write about Hispanic people, Chicanos, and there was very little. We didn't see ourselves in the literature. There was a bit of literature and it focused on poverty, but here was my father, very much a working class man, trying to better our life chances. And I knew that there was much more. So I continued to write about Hispanic Americans, Southwesterns, more Hispanics, more specifically, and Chicanos. Well, of course, by the time I was 24, I was full-blown civil rights activist in the Chicano movement. And I started reading my poetry at rallies and meetings. And there's some of my unpublished poetry. I would just give it away and it would show up. I have an archives at the University of Texas at Austin. And some of my poetry shows up there. People have been donating it. So it's very nice to know that it still lives and lives quite well. So because we did not see ourselves in American literature, we set about, but not consciously inventing it. I joined poetry groups. One of them was in Pueblo, Colorado, where I was living at that time. Oh, by the way, I did get divorced. My husband and I had some problems. And I believe that divorce can be therapeutic. And I really do. And so later, much later, I wrote about how divorce was therapeutic as a feminist issue. That article got lost. I don't know where it is, and nobody else seems to have found it. But because we were not present in the literature, throughout the Southwest, more specifically Chicago also, groups began to get together to read. And as the poetry, as the rallies and the meetings increased, we became more visible. Probably one of the first poems that was Chicano in nature was Corky's Yo Soy Joaquin, Corky Gonzalez. Actually, his name is Rodolfo Gonzalez, he's deceased now. Yo Soy Joaquin translates into I am Joaquin and is available in both English and Spanish. However, when I read that book, I loved it. It's just a little tiny book and very well produced and has great photographs in it. I got caught up on one line. I am the eyes of women sheltered beneath the black shawl. I thought, well, it's nice that there was one line in the poem dedicated to women. But the black shawl is symbolic of death in where I come from. And because we wore tapalos. I come from a culture that still covered their heads in black, mostly in black because the elder ladies, that's what they wore. And we wore white ones until we became elder ladies. And it's also about mourning. So I have a lot of stories to tell you, but I need to stay on point. Anyway, that particular line drove me to begin writing more frequently about women in a journal. So I've kept a journal since 1967, and you're going to be in it. Every time I come to Southwest Writers, I make a note in there that I was here and what was discussed and who was present, etc. And I'm very glad not only to see you today, but also some of my friends from Denver and other places that were on the Zoo introduction section. Several Poets evolved. One of my favorites and a personal friend was Lalo Delgado. Ricardo Sanchez, a Pinto poet right out of prison, wrote beautiful poetry. Neftali, out of Texas. These are all out of Texas. Neftali is the only one living of the Los Cuatro. And Tigre. So it was Lalo Delgado, Ricardo Sanchez, Neftali, and Tigre. And only Neftali is alive. They were very supportive of me. They were very supportive of the women poets in Texas, too. That's not to say we didn't have problems with men. We did, but we could at least talk to them. Okay, something that kind of threw off publishers and didn't get us published as frequently as we probably deserve to be published was the fact that we code switched rather. Some people call it Spanglish. I don't like that term, but it's code switching when you, in the middle of a sentence, switch to another language. Like when my mother and my aunt would be baking something, they would be at the stove talking, and my mother would say, I don't know. Adelita fue a la escuela y no le gustó, and I don't know what we're going to do about it. That threw publishers off. In fact, Rudy and I, would you hold? Oh, I got a book here. I published a book, but the conversations with Rudy. Rudy had a hard time publishing Bless Me Ultima because of the code switching. It took a Chicano publisher, a small Chicano publisher out of Berkeley, to understand what Rudy was doing and why he was doing it and how he was doing it, and finally got Bless Me Ultima not only published but became very well known throughout the world. So code switching is it just happens. It just takes place. This is my friend Rose here. Wave to the people, Rose, please. I pay tribute to Rose because she understands not only my code switching, my very poor English sometimes, and she also understands my hallucination. And we'll talk about the fact that when I wrote Talking with Rudy, Rudy really did appear in my car and talk to me after he passed away. Who here has seen a ghost? See, many. So it happens, and there are a lot of reasons why it happens to some people more than others. And if we have time, maybe we can talk about that. As poets, we decided we were going to break as many rules as possible. So we didn't capitalize words. We sometimes italicized our Spanish. Every time I publish, I have to have a conversation with the publisher about, do you italicize the Spanish words or not? I love you, Rose, because she said, I guess you don't have to if you don't want to. And that's really kind of where it's at, right? And it's still a conversation that takes place very frequently. The other thing we did was we staggered the lines. So we're not aligned along the margins. Sometimes we indent, sometimes we indent 3 or 4 times, sometimes we indent across the page. Rose at one point had to call me and say, Irene, I can't get the whole thing on one line. So what do we want to do? So it presents problems to people. It doesn't present problems to us because that is our life. Okay, so the Chicanas women, okay, I probably am going to get the question, what is a Chicano? To call yourself a Chicano has to do with how you understand the structure and function of racism and power in this country. And it has to do with self-identity. And so I don't push it on anybody. That's another conversation for another time. But from the Chicano movement emerged the Chicana movement, who women like myself, about my same age, who saw that within the movement as it progressed, particularly in the Southwest, that the sexism didn't allow us to participate at the rate that we knew we could. For example, we always needed money. Social movements generally need money. Um, so we would make burritos or tacos or whatever we were going to sell on campus or in the community, and we would sell them. And the men would come and collect the money and take it off, hopefully to the bank. I'm sure to the bank. But what happened was we never got thanked. We never got recognized for anything beyond making burritos. So we confronted it within the Chicano movement meetings. And once we explained to men that sexism functions amongst women or towards women the way racism functions, they were very quick to understand that. So I have some wonderful colleagues, some of them from the National Association of Chicano Studies, very early on, who knew that and were very supportive of that. In fact, I was the first national president, I think in 1980, of that organization. 1,500 people would show up to the meeting. And then I would begin with, we want to welcome the CIA and the FBI because we knew they were in the parking lot taking down license plates. One question I sometimes get is, were you afraid? No. I had all my brothers and sisters with me, my movement brothers and sisters. Were you ever attacked? Yes. I was chased across a parking lot. I got rape threats. I was called every name in the book, and including bitch. And I said, you only call me a bitch because you can't control me. So F off. And that was the way I spent it wasn't a misspent youth, but that was the context in which my youth took place. I was raising a daughter, and my daughter was sick of the Chicano movement because she didn't like the meetings. The meetings lasted too long. She would fall asleep, and we just this was in Colorado, so the winter was harsh. We'd throw our coats on the floor, and she would fall asleep underneath the table. That is not good mothering. But she was with me and she was safe, and I felt good about it. So some of the Chicanas that come to the forefront, there are many, but I just have selected a few. Gloria Anzaldúa, Sherry Moraga, Sandra Cisneros, Torna Cervantes. These women and other women, Carmen Tafoya, for example, also from Texas, were the first to address gender roles in writing. And many of them extended that into writing about sexual identity and gender diversity. So very quickly, the movement began to address some of the cutting issues of the day. And cut they did. Our parents were not too happy with us sometimes. My mother said, why don't you marry Richard? He likes you. I said, no, I don't think I want to do that. I'll read you some poems in a few minutes. But basically, that poetry for us was a mirror of history. What we were doing was talking about how the social circumstance of the day, which was the 1960s, 70s, into the 80s, was affecting us. And we were all baby boomers with similar ideas and similar goals. And one of them was to bear witness to history. And that's what poetry does. Very frequently, it documents history. It was also a call for justice. It was it also served the function of forming popular opinions. It was educational for us, and opinions did come from our poetry. It came out loud and strong. In my writing, I used it to alert readers to the realities of women's lives in the United States. And civil rights poetry for me was a struggle, was to document the struggle, to document the resilience, and also was a hope in my mind to empower people who were marginalized. This had much support among the women of the feminist movement, our Black brothers and sisters in the Black civil rights movement. And AIM was a little bit on the outskirts for us, but it impacted us severely. We had coalition with them. They were supportive of our issues. We were supportive of theirs. But it lit in our minds that we were part indigenous. My mother's people come from the Taos Pueblo, thousands of years. And we had not claimed that because we had internalized the teachings of mainstream America. Today we call it colonization. We didn't have a word for it then. But we had become institutionalized under this thing called colonization, where we believed in the Pledge of Allegiance, but we saw that our brothers and sisters were predominantly marked in the populations of imprisonment. That our Chicano brothers who went to Vietnam were killed disproportionately to the number that they were in the general population. These we saw as injustices because they were injustices. There were very few poems that were tributes to figureheads. We don't have a lot of those, but they do exist. And we have a new population now that is learning about Chicanismo on the internet. There is the Brown Book Club and other Facebook entities that have meetings, read books, and they're very well informed. They're very young, and they feel like perhaps they discovered this. And sometimes it grates us elders. I'm going to be 80 years old on Tuesday. Rosa's, I don't know her age because it doesn't matter. Rosa has a birthday tomorrow. So wish Rosa happy birthday when you get a limit. So, so when the elders get together and the young people are speaking, we just kind of hold our tongue and applaud. But I would like to see more of a link between those of us that are still here, and we're leaving very quickly. Very quickly, we're dying off. But I would like to see more of a link between the younger poets, the younger authors, and those of us who are a little bit older. So the whole thing was about the movement for me was about mobilizing people to address injustices. And this was something that happened amongst baby boomers. This was also the hippie era, where you could go without a bra and wear a skimpy little halter top and bell bottoms that began right above the navel. And we were cute. We were so cute. I think you need to think of poetry as something that, what happened to my generation was that our fifth grade teachers kicked the poetry right out of us. I had a beautiful teacher in Mrs. Hoffman, and she read us European poetry every Friday afternoon. Well, that was a terrible time. We were tired, and the weekend was coming up, and it was 2:30, and the last thing we wanted to listen to was classical European poetry, to which we didn't relate because we didn't understand. What I saw were beautiful words in beautiful cadence. And I wanted to do that. And the first thing I could think of was the Lord's Prayer, Our Father. So I wrote, Our Mothers. And my spirituality took another turn so that I finally left the Catholic Church. But I love the Catholic Church teachings and I do love the art. And it's very much a part of my life. I had to come back to New Mexico. I had to come back. I was born on the top and on the backside of a northern New Mexico mountain. And I have been all over the world, China, Israel, you name it. I probably have been there. But there's no place as beautiful and as sacred and germane to my center than northern New Mexico. And I have a 7-minute poem. I'm not going to read it to you today. That has to do with the fires and what it did, not only to the land. It scorched cemeteries, burned the ancestors. It made the land useless for several years. Some things are coming back. Those people have not been awarded settlements by our government. But the fires continue throughout the state. So I want to end my little lecture here. I didn't want to give you a lecture on the structure and function of when she laughs. Yes, the structure and function of poetry. But I want to read you some of my poems, if you don't mind. Okay. When we began publishing our poems, we had to publish our own poems. We came up with the idea of taking a legal-sized piece of paper, putting one poem on one side, one on the other, folding it in half, and stapling it between construction paper. And then we sold them, sometimes for 50 cents. A high price for a chapbook, especially for this one, was a whole $1. So they look kind of like this. This one is entitled Celebrating, Crying, and Cursing. I have written poetry since day one and did not publish a book until, was it 3 years ago, Rose? 2 years ago? I don't remember.
3 years ago.
Yeah. And by the way, we won a honorable mention for our cover. It is a total female production. Rose is the publisher, I'm the author, and my daughter was the cover artist. And I really like that about it. So basically what I did was take 3 or 4 of my chapbooks, condense them, put them into this book, and I also share the construction paper covers in here. So celebrating, crying, and cursing. I have a hard time coming up with titles. It's the last thing I do to a book. Was just about that. And here's a very early poem, Hija de la Tierra. Your ancestors were goddesses and kings who ruled across lifespans. Steel Town girl, your ancestors are diminished to barrio dogs and cats who roam the alleys of society. Dogs and cats teach us how to live. Hija de la Tierra, you were born to reign above the mountain. You should be born to live in peace. So that is very personal. My daughter was 4 years old. We had come from a meeting and she was asleep in her bed, and I just stood there watching her and thinking about what had taken place. Lalo Delgado said to me, my mother was a prostitute. Consejos to a bastard son. He said to me one night, my mother was a prostitute in Juarez. Oh, bastard son, esta vida está chingada. Were it not for the religion de esos tiempos, I would have cut your life. Naciste, and you have grown into manhood. I pray to God that you will be a good man. No seas tan cruel con tu esposa, it's not her fault. She also curses life. Reza, hijo, reza. A rosary that God will grant us in time and in order a life that is better. Basically, what I did was I wondered what his mother would say to him. And that was also an example of code switching. Damn, Sam, I want to save my life. I want to save it, yes. Damn, Sam, I want to share my life, but I need to live alone.
That's a good story.
It is a very good story.
Yes.
And it's because it was true. Somebody had the audacity to propose to me. And I just couldn't do that. Then there is Manita memories, my longings to return to New Mexico. By the way, I left my entire extended family, my entire nuclear family, to return to New Mexico because I missed it so. In fact, my daughter and I are the only ones here. The rest of the family is in Colorado. Manita memories has to do with the fact that I was sexually molested as a child. And I was carrying body images and feeling somebody was touching me in my private spaces and didn't understand it and finally had to go to therapy. But those things happen, right? I'll read you a poem about my freedom. Although we now exist in fear of mutilation by crazed, hateful persons using guns to maim and kill, limited as it is, I have lived freely among the fortunate, enjoying good degrees of liberty, more or less, to choose, speak freely. Though some people object, I pray easily in open spaces, go to church or not, believe in God or not, say what I want. As a girl, I was taught to read. My water is drinkable. My home is warm in winter. I was free to leave my husband when he beat me. The law in theory protects me. Yes, I have lived freely, more or less. And how much time do I still have? Are we up?
Yeah, you got a couple more minutes, and if you want to ask questions, people ask questions.
A couple?
Yeah.
I taught.
We have room for another hour and a half.
Oh, okay. I taught Chicano studies and sociology. My PhD is out of the University of New Mexico, Colorado, Boulder. And it always got sad during finals week because I enjoyed the young people so much. But I had to give them this very long test because I needed to submit a grade. And I needed to have that grade dispersed in a bell curve. Yeah. So you couldn't give too many A's and you couldn't give too many F's and D's. And my students were wonderful. And I didn't like the distribution, but I also didn't like the memos. And after a while, I just started to ignore the memos. Tests. Taking a test in Chicano studies is relative. An unhappy occasion for me. It disturbs me to think students have to test through life, come to school and be tested more. Barrio youth, survivors of time, you've passed tests enough to get to this class. I know those tests affected you. They made you stammer, stumble without knowledge, stressed at not knowing Anglo ways. Institutions make us all take tests. Hay pruebas de familia, pruebas de religión, police tests of obedience, even friendship. Life gives us answers to most investigations. It should allow us to ask our own questions so that we become the teachers of ourselves, the administrator of our own examinations. Let's see if I can find the other book. Okay, I'm not going to read you anything from New Mexico, Santa Tierra, Santo Sol, which is my desire, my celebration of the fact that I came to return to New Mexico, and I'm very happy to be here. There are a lot of things that I could tell you today, but I want to read one last poem and leave you with one last message. I've changed. I'm on a rampage now about elders and aging and social services for aging people, and trying to get youth to stop flipping us off when they cut us off on the road or run across us in Walmart or wherever we happen to be. I am not a happy camper. I am not a jolly senior citizen. I am pissed off. But here's where I live internally. I am a river flowing smoothly from my center, drifting under sunlit skies, never looking back, not too frequently looking back. I am whole and have returned to meet me, to embrace myself by myself. I have come to accept that I am sacred, no longer taking validation from worn out women wanting me to act like them. But I do respect them. I no longer listen to gringo priests telling me what to do. No teacher teaches me lies or half-truths. No brother or sister entraps me into deceiving myself. I am peaceful. I have changed from disjointed narrow streams into dancing waters, trickling over rocks and grasses, carrying trash, not dumping it. I have met myself entirely. I like me without pain. I shed no tears over evenings that last too long, no anxiety over correspondence that does not arrive. I am simply not there anymore. Those things don't matter. I have become a river flowing steady, carving my direction, my purpose. I no longer believe my press clippings. Let me end by telling you that I need you to write your truth. As convoluted and weird as it might be, if you had a conversation with a mountain lion, by all means, write it out. You need to write uncensored. You need to write often, even if you don't get applauded or get published. I would love for you to continue writing. It's therapeutic. And you are worth telling your own story. Many blessings. Any questions, comments? Thank you. I will end with, I will hold you up. I will hold you up. I love you and I will hold you up.